One standard month after the first Droo embryos began development, Clarke found herself in an unusual position, negotiating a trade agreement with a species that officially didn't exist. In the secure conference room deep within the trade corridor's administrative core, holographic displays showed resource projections and exchange protocols, while cybernetic Droo representatives studied them with unblinking sensor arrays. "The terms are acceptable," Methrex concluded after a brief consultation with his colleagues, "though we require an additional security protocol for shipments entering Haven space." Clarke's enhancement light cycled in acknowledgement. "Our technical division will implement whatever safeguards you deem necessary. Jorvis has already developed 17 different masking configurations for the cargo vessels." Beside her, Jorvis displayed a rotating hologram showing specialized ships designed to appear as standard mining vessels but containing hidden compartments and signal-dampening technology. Each configuration can be randomized to prevent pattern recognition. To any external observer, these will appear to be routine resource extraction operations. "Impressive," Methrex acknowledged, his synthetic components humming softly. "You, Grent, have always understood the value of discretion in profitable trading." The agreement they were finalizing represented an unprecedented arrangement. The cybernetic Droo would provide advanced technological schematics and rare materials gathered from beyond the galactic rim, while the Grent would supply biological necessities for the Genesis Vault and essential resources the isolated Haven colony desperately needed. "There's one matter we haven't fully addressed," Sela interjected, her diplomatic enhancements calculating risk factors. "The biological stabilization protocols for the new embryos require specialized expertise we don't currently possess." An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. What Sela was tactfully suggesting was that the embryonic Droo were developing complications, genetic instabilities that the Grent's biological sciences couldn't resolve. "We anticipated this," Methrex replied after a moment. "The data crystal I've just transmitted contains complete instructions for constructing neural linkage systems. With them, our specialists can remotely guide your technicians through the necessary procedures." "Remote guidance carries significant detection risks," Monthi noted, her historical databases projecting potential failure scenarios. "Human monitoring systems scan all transmissions within 50 light-years of their core systems, which is why the neural linkage uses quantum entanglement rather than conventional signals," Methrex explained. "Undetectable by any current technology, this is one of the advancements we developed during our isolation." Clarke's enhancement lights pulsed with appreciation. "Such technology alone would justify our arrangement. The commercial applications are considerable," Methrex interrupted, "but secondary to our current purpose. The Genesis protocols must be stabilized within the next 60 days, or this first generation will fail." The directness of his statement sobered the Grent traders. Behind the commercial calculations and diplomatic considerations lay a stark reality. They were attempting to prevent the final extinction of an ancient species. "We'll allocate whatever resources are necessary," Clarke assured him. "Our council has approved special discretionary funding for the Trade Corridor's Advanced Research Initiatives, the official designation for our work with you." "And what of the council itself?" Methrex inquired, his sensor arrays focusing intently on Clarke. "Do they suspect the true nature of these initiatives?" "They know only what we've chosen to tell them," answered, speaking for the first time in the meeting. The ancient trader had been observing quietly from a corner. "That we've discovered valuable Droo artifacts and technology requiring special handling and research. The council cares for results, not methods." "A convenient arrangement," Methrex observed, his mechanical appendages making a gesture that might have been amusement, not unlike our own governance structures before the war. The meeting concluded with formal protocol exchanges. Authentication codes, security clearances, and transportation schedules carefully encrypted and integrated into the trade corridor's legitimate operations. To an outside observer, nothing would appear unusual about the increased activity in search. Just another profitable venture for the ever-enterprising Grent. As the Droo representatives prepared to depart in their cloaked shuttle, Methrex approached Telex privately. "There is one matter we haven't discussed in the open session," he said, his voice modulated to prevent even enhanced Grent hearing from detecting it. "The Genesis Vault isn't merely struggling with this first small batch of embryos. Its systems were designed to operate at much larger capacity." "Larger?" Telex questioned. "By what factor?" "Orders of magnitude," Methrex replied. "The facility was built to process thousands of embryos simultaneously, with production capacity in the millions over time. Operating at minimal capacity causes system instabilities that threaten the entire project." Telex's enhancement lights cycled through rapid calculation patterns. "You're suggesting we should significantly expand the resurrection program before we've even successfully stabilized the first generation?" "I am stating a technical reality," Methrex corrected. "The systems function optimally at higher production levels, just as your trading networks become more efficient with increased volume." Before Telex could respond, Methrex transmitted a data packet directly to her personal storage. "Review this when you're alone," he instructed. "It contains the full technical specifications of the Genesis Vault's optimal operational parameters. The decision, of course, remains yours." Hours later, in her private quarters, Telex reviewed the data Methrex had provided. The specifications were staggering. The vault had been designed not for gradual species revival, but for full-scale civilization restoration. At optimal capacity, it could produce up to 10 million viable Droo embryos per standard year. Her enhancement lights pulsed with concern as she contemplated the implications. Their carefully measured approach to Droo resurrection suddenly seemed inadequate to the technology they were working with. Yet the political risks of accelerated production were equally daunting. A soft chime announced a visitor. Telex quickly secured the data before acknowledging the request. "Enter," she called, her voice modulator automatically shifting to a more formal register. Stepped into the room, his ancient eyes immediately registering the tension in her enhancement patterns. "Methrex spoke with you privately," he observed. "Not a question." "Yes," Telex confirmed. He provided additional specifications for the vault's operations. "And suggested accelerated production," added, settling into a chair across from her. "I suspected as much." His enhancement patterns showed decision trees activating whenever production schedules were mentioned. "You've become quite adept at reading cybernetic Droo enhancements," Telex noted. "A skill developed during the war," acknowledged. "Their biological ancestors displayed similar pattern sequences when formulating strategy." Telex hesitated, then activated a secure holographic display showing the vault's specifications. "According to this data, the system becomes increasingly unstable below certain production thresholds. Our current approach may actually endanger the project." Studied the display, his enhancement lights cycling through analysis patterns. "Or this could be a calculated move to accelerate resurrection beyond our agreed timeline." "You suspect deception?" Telex asked, surprised. Their entire arrangement with the Droo had been built on mutual necessity and carefully negotiated trust. "Not deception," clarified. "Perspective. Remember that the cybernetic Droo, despite their transformation, still carry the cultural memory of a species that faced extinction. Their primary imperative is survival and restoration. Ours is profitable trade with acceptable risk levels. But if the technical specifications are accurate, then we face a more complex calculation than anticipated," finished for her. "One that requires careful analysis." Telex's enhancement lights pulsed with decision-making patterns. "I'll have Jorvis verify the specifications independently. If they prove accurate, we'll need to reconsider our production schedule." "A wise approach," approved. "But there's another factor to consider." His expression grew serious. "I've noticed an increase in human visitors to our primary trading hubs. Nothing suspicious in any individual case. Researchers, trade negotiators, tourists exploring the new frontier we've opened. But the pattern suggests more than coincidental interest." "You think they suspect something?" Telix asked, her enhancement lights dimming with concern. Humans have always been paranoid about the Droo, reminded her. Even after all this time, their intelligence services maintain special divisions focused solely on detecting any sign of Droo resurgence. We must assume they're watching us, even if they don't yet know what they're looking for. All the more reason to ensure our operations remain undetectable, Telix noted. If Methrex is correct about system instabilities, a catastrophic failure at the vault could create signals that even our security measures couldn't contain. Nodded slowly. Proceed with the verification. If expansion proves necessary, we will adapt our plans accordingly, but with even greater security protocols. As he left, Telix returned to the data, her enhancement lights cycling through complex decision trees. What had begun as a carefully controlled experiment was rapidly evolving into something far more ambitious. The question was no longer whether they could resurrect a few Droo as cultural consultants, but whether they were embarking on the wholesale rebirth of a civilization, and whether the galaxy was ready for such a resurrection. Jorvis's verification proved conclusive. The Genesis Vault systems were indeed designed for mass production and became increasingly unstable at lower operational levels. The Grent traders found themselves facing an unexpected choice: drastically expand the resurrection program or risk losing it entirely to cascading system failures. In the secure command center adjacent to the vault facility, disguised as a standard mining operation, Telix reviewed the options with her team. The diagnostic simulations confirm Methrax data, Jorvis reported. His technical enhancements directly interfaced with the facility's systems. The vault's neural matrices are exhibiting degradation patterns consistent with suboptimal operational parameters. Put simply, the system was built to run hot. Attempting to run it cool is causing damage. How significant is the degradation? Telix asked. At current production levels, critical failure within 138 standard days, Jorvis projected. Less if we continue experiencing genetic stabilization issues with the current embryo batch. Manthus historical databases had been analyzing the vault's design philosophy. The architecture suggests a wartime contingency plan intended for rapid species restoration following catastrophic population loss. The Droo who built this weren't thinking about careful diplomatic reintegration. They were ensuring species survival at all costs, which aligns with their historical patterns, Sella added. The Droo never did anything by half measures. Their entire civilization operated on principles of redundancy and overwhelming force. Telix's enhancement lights cycled through decision-making patterns. Om's network has made progress reshaping the narrative around Droo history, but nowhere near enough to prepare the galaxy for mass resurrection. Yet the technical realities leave us little choice. There is another option, Sella suggested, her diplomatic enhancements calculating alternative scenarios. We could permanently deactivate the vault, preserve the current embryo batch through manual intervention, but shut down the main systems before catastrophic failure occurs. A heavy silence fell over the room as the Grent traders contemplated this possibility. It would mean abandoning their grand vision of species restoration, settling instead for a tiny population of Droo that would forever exist as cultural curiosities rather than a restored civilization. The cybernetic Droo would never accept such an outcome, Manthe observed. Not after coming so close to resurrection. Their acceptance isn't required, Jorvis countered. We control the facility. The decision is ours. Telix moved to the viewing window overlooking the embryonic development chamber. Below, specialized Grent medical technicians monitored the first batch of developing Droo, their small forms floating in nutrient solution, delicate exoskeletal structures just beginning to form. No, she said finally. We didn't embark on this project to resurrect a museum exhibit. If the system requires higher production levels to remain stable, then we scale up accordingly, but with additional safeguards. Her enhancement lights settled into a resolved pattern. Jorvis, develop a phased expansion protocol. Begin with a production increase sufficient to stabilize the systems, but design it for gradual implementation to avoid sudden resource demands that might accelerate your historical contextualizing work. Focus on academic and cultural circles with influence on human policy decisions. We need to reshape the narrative faster than originally planned. Sela, prepare diplomatic contingencies for various discovery scenarios. If our work is exposed before we're ready, we need response strategies ranging from limited disclosure to full transparency. As her colleagues acknowledged their assignments, Telex activated the facility's secure communication array. I'll inform he'll need to expand his network's activities and allocate additional resources. And the Droo? Sela asked. Do we inform Methrex of our decision? Yes, Telex confirmed, but with clearly defined parameters. This remains our initiative, operating on our timeline. We're accommodating technical necessities, not abandoning our strategic approach. Within days, the expansion began. Resource allocations to the Special Research Division doubled, then tripled, carefully disguised within the trade corridor's overall growth. Additional facilities were constructed ostensibly for resource processing, but actually housing expanded embryonic development chambers. The neural linkage system allowed cybernetic Droo specialists to guide Grent technicians remotely, resolving the genetic stabilization issues that had threatened the first generation. Production scaled up gradually, from dozens of embryos to hundreds, then thousands. The Volt systems stabilized, operating within optimal parameters for the first time since activation. What had begun as a cautious experiment transformed into a full-scale resurrection program, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. 3 months into the expansion, requested a private meeting with Telex aboard his personal vessel, a location guaranteed to be free from any potential monitoring. Our initiative has taken on a momentum of its own, he observed as they sat in his ship's secure conference room. The resource allocation reports cross my desk daily. The scale has become significant. Telex recognized the concern beneath his measured tone. The technical requirements left us little choice. Scaling back would have meant losing everything we'd accomplished. I understand the reasoning, assured her, but we must acknowledge the reality. We've moved beyond resurrection to restoration. The current production capacity could generate a viable population base for an entire civilization within a decade. Is that not what we ultimately intended? Telex questioned. The timeline has accelerated, but the goal remains the same. Enhancement lights cycled through contemplative patterns. Goals and methods are intertwined, young trader. A slower approach would have allowed galactic opinion to evolve naturally. This acceleration puts us at risk of outpacing our diplomatic groundwork. He activated a holographic display showing security logs from various trade corridor facilities. Human presence has increased 47% across our network in the past quarter. On the surface, nothing suspicious. Research partnerships, trade delegations, cultural exchanges, all legitimate. All reasonable given our initiative's public success. But the pattern suggests intelligence gathering, Telex concluded, studying the data. Precisely, humans have always excelled at hiding observers in plain sight. Military intelligence embedded in research teams, security analysts posing as cultural attachés. Their methods are subtle but effective. Have they discovered anything? Telex asked, her enhancement lights dimming with concern. Not yet, as far as we can determine. Our security protocols have held, but the increased attention itself is telling. Something has triggered their suspicion. Telex considered this sobering assessment. Should we scale back? Try to reduce their interest by lowering our profile? Too late for that, replied. Sudden changes now would only heighten suspicion. No, we must maintain course while enhancing our countermeasures, which brings me to my proposal. He adjusted the holographic display to show a new facility design, a secondary production site completely disconnected from our primary networks, located in an unremarkable system beyond even our trade corridor's official boundaries. A redundancy should our main operation be compromised. Telex studied the design, her enhancement lights pulsing with appreciation for its elegance. A significant investment. Less costly than losing everything to discovery, noted. The corridor's profits can easily absorb the expense if properly structured. And staffing. A second facility would require trusted personnel we can ill afford to spare from the main operation. I've identified suitable candidates from my former students, ones with both the necessary skills and appropriate ethical frameworks. They would be told only what they need to know, a special research initiative, sensitive but legitimate. Talix's enhancement lights cycled through analytical patterns. The proposal was sound, a classic risk mitigation strategy, yet it represented another step deeper into their growing enterprise, another escalation from their original, modest plan. Very well, she decided finally. Proceed with the secondary facility, but let's also consider an extraction protocol, a way to quickly secure our existing embryos should discovery become imminent. Om's enhancement lights pulsed with approval. Already in development, Jervis has designed specialized transport vessels disguised as standard medical evacuation ships. They could relocate the viable embryos to secured facilities within hours of activation. As they concluded their meeting, Talix found herself reflecting on how far they had come from that first discovery in the abandoned Droo archive. What had begun as a trade initiative had evolved into something far more complex, a massive, clandestine operation dedicated to resurrecting an extinct civilization. "Teacher," she said as they prepared to part, "do you ever question whether we've exceeded our mandate? Whether we've taken on responsibilities beyond what traders should bear?" Om's ancient eyes studied her for a long moment. "Every day," he acknowledged. "But then I remember, the greatest traders in history were never merely merchants exchanging goods. They were civilization builders, creating connections between worlds, establishing foundations for progress and prosperity." His enhancement light settled into a pattern of certainty. "We are not merely trading in goods, young Talix. We are trading in possibility, the most valuable commodity of all." As she returned to her duties, Talix carried those words with her, finding reassurance in their wisdom. Yet beneath that reassurance lay a persistent concern that in their quest to restore one civilization, they might be risking another. The relationship between the Grent traders and the cybernetic Droo evolved rapidly as the resurrection program expanded. What had begun as cautious cooperation transformed into an integrated operation, with Droo specialists becoming increasingly involved in the day-to-day management of the Genesis facilities. 6 months into the expanded production, a secure meeting room in the Phase 3 hub hosted what had become a regular joint strategy session. Talix and her team sat across from Methrex and 3 other cybernetic Droo, discussing progress and challenges with the familiarity of long-standing partners. "The 15th generation has shown marked improvement in neurological development," Methrex reported, his sensor arrays displaying satisfaction patterns. "The modifications to the growth medium have resolved the synaptic formation issues we encountered in previous batches." "Credit goes to your biochemical specialists," Jervis acknowledged. "The neural linkage system has proven invaluable for real-time adjustments to the cultivation protocols." Manthi, monitoring the cultural development curriculum being prepared for the maturing embryos, raised a concern that had been growing in recent weeks. "We should discuss the educational frameworks again. The current program emphasizes Droo history from a primarily victorious perspective." The subtle shift in her enhancement patterns didn't go unnoticed by the Droo. Methrex's mechanical appendages made a gesture of concession. "You refer to the historical modules covering the pre-war expansion period," he noted. "You find them too triumphalist. They present territorial conquest as inherently beneficial," Manthi explained diplomatically. "The emphasis on Droo cultural superiority and manifest destiny echoes precisely the attitudes that led to conflict with humanity." "These are historical facts," countered Trelvik, one of the Droo specialists whose synthetic components seemed more pronounced than Methrex. "Our civilization achieved greatness through expansion and strength. Would you have us teach our descendants to be ashamed of their heritage?" "Not ashamed," Sela interjected, her diplomatic enhancements working to diffuse the tension. but contextually aware. For successful reintegration into galactic society, the new generation must understand why the war occurred and how to prevent similar conflicts. Reintegration presupposes subordination, Trelvik replied, an edge entering his synthesized voice. That we must accommodate ourselves to galactic standards set by the very species that tried to exterminate us. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was the first time any of the cybernetic Droo had so openly expressed resentment toward the current galactic order, and by extension toward humanity. Mithrak's sensor rays pulsed in what the Grent had come to recognize as a calming pattern. My colleague speaks from historical passion, not current policy. Our survival has taught us the value of coexistence. Of course, Telex acknowledged, though her enhancement lights betrayed her concern. Nevertheless, Manthe raises a valid point. The educational frameworks will shape how the new generation perceives their place in the galaxy. Balance is essential. We will review the modules, Mithrax conceded. Perhaps a joint committee could develop revisions acceptable to both our perspectives. The meeting continued, addressing technical matters, resource allocations, and security protocols. Yet the brief moment of tension had revealed something important. Beneath the cybernetic Droo's carefully maintained facade of philosophical transformation, old attitudes remained. Later, in Telek's private office, the Grent traders discussed the implications. Trelvik's reaction wasn't an aberration, Manthe observed, her historical databases correlating behavioral patterns. I'd noted similar responses from other Droo specialists when discussing post-resurrection scenarios. There's a consistent undercurrent of reclamation thinking. Meaning? Telex prompted. They don't view resurrection as merely survival or cultural preservation, Manthe explained. Some see it as restoration of their rightful place in the galactic order, a return to prominence. That contradicts everything Mithrax has told us about their philosophical evolution, Sella noted, their supposed abandonment of expansionist thinking. Not necessarily, Jorvis countered. Mithrax may genuinely believe in coexistence, but we're dealing with 237 individuals who spent a century in isolation, watching the galaxy move on without them. It would be surprising if they all shared identical perspectives. Telex's enhancement lights cycled through analysis patterns. Is this a security concern? Could factional divisions among the Droo compromise our operation? Difficult to assess, Manthe replied. The cybernetic Droo maintain their own secure communication channels. We only see what they choose to show us during official interactions. Which brings us to a related matter, Jorvis added, activating a secure holographic display. I've been monitoring resource utilization patterns across our facilities. There are discrepancies, small, carefully distributed, but present. The display showed a complex network of resource flows with highlighted anomalies throughout the system. Explain, Telex requested, her enhancement lights focusing on the data. Certain materials are being diverted, Jorvis elaborated. Specialized alloys, quantum computational components, advanced propulsion elements. Nothing dramatic in any single instance, but the cumulative pattern is significant. The Droo are siphoning resources, Sella concluded, her diplomatic enhancements already calculating potential responses. For what purpose? Unknown, Jorvis admitted. But given the types of materials involved, I would hypothesize technology development beyond what's been disclosed to us. A heavy silence fell over the room as the Grent traders absorbed this revelation. After everything they had risked for the Droo resurrection, after all the resources they had committed, their partners were apparently conducting covert operations within their own initiative. We need more information before confronting Mithrax, Telex decided. Jorvis, expand your monitoring. Track exactly what's being diverted and where it might be going. Sella, use your diplomatic contacts to discreetly assess whether any unusual technological signals have been detected near Haven or other known Droo locations. And if we confirm unauthorized activities? Manthe asked. Then we reassess our partnership parameters, Telex replied, her enhancement lights settling into a resolved pattern. Remember that we initiated this project from a position of strength. We control the Genesis facilities. We can adjust terms if necessary. As the meeting concluded, Telex remained behind, reviewing the resource discrepancy data more carefully. The pattern troubled her, not just for its implications of Droo deception, but for what it revealed about their own oversight. They had become so focused on the technical and diplomatic challenges of resurrection that they had allowed operational security to lapse. A soft chime announced a visitor. Telex secured the data before responding. "Enter," she called. To her surprise, a human stepped into her office, a man she recognized as Commander William Bright, officially assigned as a security liaison for human Grent joint operations in the trade corridor. He was of average height for his species, with a closely cropped military haircut showing touches of gray at the temples and the distinct muscular build and perfect posture that marked career military personnel. "Director Telex," he greeted her, using her official title in the Trade Corridor Administration. "I hope I'm not interrupting. Your assistant mentioned you might have a moment." "Commander Bright," Telex acknowledged, her enhancement lights automatically shifting to a neutral business pattern. "This is unexpected. What can I do for you?" "Just a courtesy visit," Bright explained, settling into the chair across from her without waiting for an invitation, a human directness that still occasionally caught Grent off guard. "We've been noticing increased ship traffic in some of the deeper sectors. Thought I should check if there's anything my team should be aware of." Telex's enhancement lights flickered briefly before she controlled them. His casual mention of deeper sectors clearly referenced areas near where their Droo operations were located. "Standard resource development expansion," she replied smoothly. "The eastern expanse has proven even richer than our initial surveys suggested." "I'm sure it has," Bright agreed with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You, Grent, always find value where others see only emptiness." As he spoke, Telex noticed something she had overlooked in previous interactions. Behind his diplomatic veneer, Bright carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a combat veteran. The way he had settled into the chair, always maintaining clear sight lines to both the door and her position, the unconscious scanning of the room for potential threats or surveillance. After a few more minutes of innocuous conversation about trade corridor operations, Bright rose to leave. "Well, I won't take any more of your time," he said. "Just wanted to maintain our open lines of communication. These frontier regions can be unpredictable." "Indeed," Telex agreed, rising from her chair. "The Grent Trading Council values our partnership with humanity. Clear communication is essential for mutual profit." Bright nodded, then paused at the doorway. "One more thing. We've been seeing an unusual number of human visitors requesting extended stays in the trade corridor lately. Might want to keep your security protocols updated." "Thank you for the advice, Commander. We'll remain vigilant." Bright studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without further explanation, he departed. 3 months later, after extensive monitoring had confirmed the Droo's systematic resource diversions and unauthorized operations, Telex and her team convened a confrontation meeting with Methrex. The evidence was irrefutable. The cybernetic Droo had been siphoning materials for weapons development while accepting the Grent's generous assistance with resurrection. "Your deception threatens everything we've built," Telex said, her voice modulator unable to completely hide her anger as she presented the evidence. "If humans discovered weapons development associated with Droo resurrection, they would respond with immediate military action. A necessary precaution given our vulnerable position," Methrex explained dismissively. "While we value our partnership with the Grent, history has taught us the danger of depending entirely on others for our survival." The discussion continued for hours, growing increasingly tense as the full extent of the Droo's covert operations became clear. Not only had they diverted resources, but they had established independent facilities beyond Grent knowledge or control, effectively using the trade corridor as cover for rebuilding their military capabilities. "This violates the foundation of our agreement," Jorvis stated flatly. "We risked everything to help resurrect your species, not to facilitate a military resurgence." "You see threats where there is only prudence," Methrex countered. "These measures are purely defensive." insurance against a galaxy that once tried to exterminate us. By the meeting's end, it was clear that the partnership had fundamentally changed. The Droo would continue to cooperate with the Resurrection program, but their independent operations would also continue. The Grent could accept this new reality or withdraw their support entirely. As Telex and her team left the secure meeting room, they found Commander Bright waiting in the corridor. His presence there, in a section of the trade corridor not normally frequented by humans, was both surprising and concerning. "Director Telex," he greeted her with a nod. "Productive meeting?" Telex's enhancement lights cycled through carefully neutral patterns. "Commander Bright, you're far from the usual human sections of the hub." "Just familiarizing myself with the facility layout," he replied casually, though his eyes studied them intently. "Part of my security duties." Something in his manner suggested more knowledge than he should possess, as if he was fully aware of who they had been meeting with and why. As they prepared to continue past him, Bright spoke again, his voice low enough that only they could hear. "Old habits die hard. Watch your backs." The cryptic warning hung in the air as he walked away, leaving the Grent traders frozen in momentary shock. The implications were clear. Bright knew about their dealings with the Droo and was warning them about their partner's true nature. Back in Telex's secure office, the team processed the disturbing encounter. "Knows," Sela stated flatly. "The humans are aware of our Droo operations." "Not just aware," Monthi added, her historical databases correlating the evidence. His warning suggests detailed knowledge of Droo behavioral patterns. "Old habits die hard" clearly references their historical tendency toward deception and conquest. Why warn us? Jorvis wondered. If human intelligence has identified our operation, why not take direct action? Because they're watching, Telex realized, her enhancement lights cycling through analysis patterns. They're observing how the situation develops. Bright didn't just happen to be in that corridor. He was positioned there deliberately, waiting to deliver that message. The increased human presence in the corridor, noted. Wright mentioned it before. They're not just visitors, they're observers. Intelligence operatives, military personnel, all disguised as researchers and cultural exchange participants. "We've been permitted to continue," Telex concluded, "for now." But Bright warning suggests the humans see a threat we've underestimated. The Droo aren't just building defenses, they're preparing for something more. Am's ancient eyes seemed to look beyond the present moment. History repeats itself. The Droo begin with deception, then move to advantage, and finally to dominance. It was their pattern before the war, and it appears their cybernetic evolution hasn't altered their fundamental nature. "What do we do?" Jorvis asked. "Terminate the partnership? Alert the humans to the full extent of Droo activities?" "Neither yet," Telex decided. "We maintain the Resurrection program, but enhance our monitoring of Droo operations. We accelerate our contingency planning in case rapid disengagement becomes necessary. And we reevaluate everything Methrex has told us about their population, capabilities, and intentions." As they dispersed to implement these measures, Telex remained alone in her office, reviewing Bright warning again in her mind. The humans, with their long history of conflict with the Droo, had recognized patterns that the Grent had missed. For all their trading acumen and diplomatic skill, they had allowed themselves to be manipulated by partners who saw cooperation merely as a path to advantage. "Old habits die hard," she murmured to the empty room. "Indeed they do." Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.